Welcome back to another episode of the Empowerful Health Podcast. I'm Jeremy Kerrigan, the host, and today we're welcoming back for a second time, Caleb Marsh. Thanks for being here, Caleb.
Great to be here.
We're excited today. We're going to talk about a couple of fun concepts. There's a few reasons. Generally, I interview healthcare providers, and Caleb, you're not a healthcare provider.
Not even close.
So why am I interviewing Caleb? And there's a couple of reasons for that. Problems are problems. Caleb's a problem solver. He runs a company called Red Legend. They solve marketing and creative problems. And so solving problems is solving problems. Those solutions can be there. But also, I admire Caleb. Caleb's come through a lot of different health challenges and pushed himself and overcome them. So that's what we're going to be talking about today and why Caleb's here. So thanks for being here.
Delighted to be here.
Anything you'd like to say to introduce yourself?
Nope, you did it
Pretty much covered it. Okay. We're going to dive in then. We're going to talk today about resistance and friction. He calls it friction. I call it resistance. Same concept. Stuff that slows us down. You want to explain a little bit of what that is?
Yeah, I mean, my basic theory is essentially you've got, as a human, goals and things that help you get there and things that slow you down. And it's pretty simple when you break it down that way, but in our lives it gets complicated. And I'm a big fan of finding ways to overcome friction or, push past stuff, condition yourself to it, basically be able to achieve your goals better and better.
I love what you said there. You have things that push you forward and things that slow you down. And a lot of times we don't look at both, We see what's slowing us down or how can I push myself farther forward instead of addressing both ends of it. Reducing friction helps us move forward faster with less energy. So I wanted to highlight that for a second. I really like that concept.
Yeah, I mean, if you really break it down to a physics analogy, it's like a force forward or a negative force backward. It's the same thing.
Right.
So, yeah.
Well, it's the sum, like the direction we're going to go is the sum of those. If you have, I don't know, force terms, but say 20 force pushing you forward and 10 force pushing you back, then you have a net forward of 10. Right?
Exactly. So it's about making yourself better able to put force into your momentum, remove things that are stopping you, catch things that are going to help push you forward.
Sure. And removing is interesting because I think it's minimized. We can't remove all resistance.
No.
We're in this world. There is resistance in this world to anything
Right.
we're trying to accomplish. So trying to minimize, work with that, work around that, or like we're going to talk about a little bit later is build up momentum to overcome the resistance. So.
Yeah. And especially on that concept of removing, the biggest thing that I've found is be intentional about how you spend your time. Like you're spending your time. We so often spend our time unconsciously doing things that slow us down.
Right.
Just even wasting time.
Sure.
Like we will slow down if left to ourselves.
Absolutely. We're idle in nature. We want to go, I don't know, downhill, if you will. I guess we don't want to go downhill, but we want the path of least resistance. It's kind of like water. And sometimes when we're talking about this, actually, like less resistance isn't always better, right? The path of least resistance may not be the path where we want to go.
Right.
So that's kind of the concept. It's not about minimizing resistance. It's about deciding where you want to go and working with the resistance and working through that to get where we want to go.
Yeah. It's never about the resistance. It's about the goal.
Right.
And finding the best way to the goal, which is going to the path of least resistance that gets you there.
Sure.
But not the path of least resistance that gets you away from it.
Well, and sometimes it's really interesting because the path of least resistance may be the longest path. And so there are times where like there is a path with more resistance, but it's going to get us there quicker type thing. It's going to require more effort. A great example of this is I watched an interview with Tom Holland, who plays Spider-Man. Everyone should know that he plays Spider-Man at this point, but he was talking about like people ask him, hey, how did you get in such great shape? He's like, oh, that's easy. I just worked out with these electrodes that stimulated my muscles at the same time. So essentially it's doing these workouts and also being stimulated by these electrodes to amplify the workouts. So like that's not the path of least resistance, right? The least resistance would be just take more time and build that. He was doing the path of most resistance to be most effective to get him in the right shape to start the movie a lot sooner.
Right. I mean, and in that case, part of the goal is time.
Right.
right? It can't take 10 years to get in shape.
Absolutely.
You got 8 weeks.
Yep. Because he won't look like a teenage Spider-Man anymore in 10 years, right? He might. That kid looks like he's 12 still, but you know.
I think an interesting concept to bring in is mental health and mental strength. It's something we've talked about in the past. And you see so much focus on mental health, which is great because we have mental breakdown.
Right.
But that focus often gets sort of skewed from mental health to mental ease. Those are very different, right? If you're overwhelmed physically or mentally, taking the stressors off will result in you no longer being overwhelmed.
Sure. At least in that time frame.
Yeah. So good. If you are being pushed past the breaking point, remove some stressors.
Sure.
But where we see it go wrong so often is, hey, I'm going to avoid stressors for my mental health because they will break me. Maybe rather than that, like if you want to be physically healthy, you need to be physically strong.
Sure.
So what do you do to get physically strong? You strategically break down your muscle, lift heavy things,
right,
in a controlled manner, in a safe setting. You push yourself and keep pushing those limits so that in the real world, you can handle, a big weight.
Absolutely.
And it's the same thing with mental health. You need to be exposing yourself to mental stress to get mentally strong so that you can be mentally healthy. Mental health is not about avoiding things that trigger you.
Right.
It's about learning to handle things that trigger you.
Absolutely. And building up that resistance. It's interesting because I like this concept. There's this idea when we're pursuing mental health is it's pursuing diagnoses, and you get diagnosed with a mental health condition and then you try to adapt your life to fit the condition versus adapting you to overcome and work with the condition.
Yeah.
A lot of times people see it, and I'm purposeful with my language when I talk about mental health. I always say I experience anxiety, I experience this versus I am an anxious person or I have anxiety, and like taking it on and owning it. That's where that limits us,
Yeah. It's like saying I'm a person that can't walk a mile. Well, you not right now.
Absolutely.
Can you walk 100 feet? Okay. So you're a person who can walk.
Right. Can you walk from here to the door? Can you walk from, starting where you're at and then slowly building that in?
Yep. And then that becomes running and sprinting and climbing.
Eventually. So
it takes
with electrodes on you can speed that process up. So, but it's interesting because we had this conversation. You gave this talk a little while ago, and one of the things, like I don't love ordering food at restaurants. Chipotle is a pretty good example. You're like shouting over the glass. 20 people are listening to you, and so I just do the online ordering, and then I can go grab the bag off the shelf, And so I've actually been purposefully trying to push myself a little bit more and be like, okay, I don't love that. It's not my favorite. But so it's not a trigger, an anxious thing for me. Why don't I do it more frequently? Go through the process, not be sitting on my phone the whole time, like changing little things like that. And again, like you said, building up resistance. I want to talk for a second to where some people are. There's some mental health crises where things are really bad. And there are times for cutting all those things out, reducing the triggers and allowing the nervous system, allowing the person to calm down, calm and heal and get back to a baseline. But then coming out of that, it's really important to do little things, to push ourselves out of our comfort zone and to avoid the language of, I can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I have this condition. I can't do X, Y, and Z. That's such a limiting thing. Like you said, I can't walk a mile.
Yeah.
I can't do this. I can't. What's the old thing? The 4-minute mile?
Yeah.
Was that the barrier that was broken, right? It was impossible. It was humanly impossible to run less than a 4-minute mile until someone did it. And then I don't remember how many people did it in the next year.
Immediately, people started breaking it.
In a year, like dozens of people did the same thing because we saw it as a possibility. So the more we limit ourselves with our language, we don't see it as a possibility that we can go beyond that point.
I find it so helpful to just keep relating it back to the example that we can see and touch, which is, okay, you broke both femurs. Don't try to walk.
Right. Don't sign up for a marathon next week.
That's it. Don't move. Go to the hospital and go through rehab. But I mean, you see people who have been injured in horrible ways, but what do? They start walking with assistance. They take a step or two on their own. It's rehab. It takes a lot of time. It takes hard work. It's okay to never be back to, 100%, but 100% is relative.
Right.
No one's ever at 100% of their capability, ever.
Nope.
I don't think. We can get close, but humanness is change and growth. Physically, spiritually, mentally, like we always have more capacity to grow literally forever.
That's one of the coolest things about life, is that there always is room for development. But it's also, a lot of times we use it as a crutch, because since I can't do it perfectly, why should I try? And so many times we give up on stuff. John Acuff writes about this in his book, Finish, and how we take a simple task and then it's not, or we set a goal, we have a task before us, and then we try it and we're not good at it immediately. So we stop trying because, I'm not meant to do that. It's like, no, of course you're not good at it. You've never done this before.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Or it's been a long time since you did. It's that attitude. And I love the example of going back to like kids. A baby's born and can do absolutely nothing, right? They can't feed themselves. They can't do anything. They can't put themselves to sleep. They're dependent wholly on another human being. But you don't see a baby like try something and then be like, I can't do that, and give up, right? They don't have that cognitive control to stop themselves. So it's incredibly rare, unless there's some sort of condition going on, for a baby to not learn how to crawl and to not learn how to walk, right? 99.9% of babies do, unless they, again, have a debilitating condition or a brain injury or something like that. So the babies just continue to try things until they get there. But as humans, we change that narrative. We have this narrative, I wasn't good at it immediately, I'm not meant to do it, or I'm not going to keep trying, instead of just having that childlike attitude of, I tried it, didn't work, try again and again and again, and keep progressing. And then as adults, as we're doing like higher level, higher competitive, we want to run a marathon. We want to, we're about to do a hike in a couple of weeks that includes rappelling and swimming and all this sort of stuff. It's like, I don't have the skills to do that, but why don't I learn? Why don't I ask people, get expert advice, and get like conditioning, get advisors, mentors to help guide me in the process so that I am ready to do a hard task when the time comes.
If you want a whole worldview summed up in one sport, it's going to be jiu-jitsu. And saying that's pretty common is get comfortable being uncomfortable.
Right.
And that's like physically uncomfortable all the time. Yeah. But it's also uncomfortable with techniques that you don't know how to do.
Sure.
And it sucks not knowing how to do stuff. And it's genuinely uncomfortable.
Sure.
Being bad at things. Get comfortable with it.
Is. Yep. And jiu-jitsu, just for my own clarity, it's like a conglomeration of a lot of things put into one, correct?
No.
Okay, never mind. Apparently, I know a lot about jiu-jitsu today, but it's, again, we'll move on from my thing. But it's that concept of, getting used to being uncomfortable, trying something new, something you're not good at. We so often stop because it is uncomfortable. It is hard to do something, and then we don't try.
Yeah, and it's something I am constantly catching in my own life. Like I'll fall into a pattern in my business, especially the last year or so. I got a little comfortable. Like it wasn't ever, it's funny. I got comfortable being uncomfortable. And so I was just okay with a level of discomfort and I wasn't doing anything to change it. And I realized it's like, why aren't we progressing? Oh, because I'm doing the same thing that I've been doing that's not working as well as it should. Okay, so let's try new things. And now it's even more uncomfortable, but we're growing, we're moving.
Absolutely. Yep. And it's the same with health. You go to the gym for the first time in 10 years, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're not going to know what you're doing. You're going to be sore afterwards. It's going to be hard to move. Preparing for this hike, I did my very first hike and I could hardly get down the mountain, like lots of pain, lots of issues. And I'm almost 40. And so it's like, I could be like, well, I got a bad knee. Hiking's not for me anymore. But I didn't want that. And so I did some work on the knee. I went out immediately the next day and did some more walking. The day after that, did some more and started continuing to push that and have done all sorts of cool things with a knee that caused immense amounts of pain on one hike, but I'm able to push through it and build up the resistance so I can do other cool things.
Yeah, that's how it works.
That's the basic concept. So tell me, let's dive in a little bit about your story. I want to talk, I've heard you tell before about running and your journey into running. For one, like, why do people run, right? But two, just like the process you went through to run when running wasn't easy for you. So
Yeah. I don't like running,
I don't know many people that do.
but also everyone who runs doesn't like running. And I don't know what it is about it. Someone else probably does. Masochism or whatever. Yeah, it's one of those great ways to master your own self,
Sure.
physically and mentally. Okay, so I could always sprint. Like growing up, I would beat kids in other races. Anything under 100 yards, I'm the fastest in my friend group, and I can also walk, like all day, every day,
Like dozens of miles, kind of thing.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been doing it. You hiked Camelback Mountain here at 5 years old, right?
Yeah.
You've been walking, hiking, all this since you were born, almost.
Yep. So I was given those two gifts of I can walk and I can sprint, and nothing in between. Growing up, I had exercise-induced asthma, so that's why 100 meters, great. Start pushing a quarter mile, dicey. Past a mile. I mean, typically, whenever I'd run any sort of race, my parents signed us up for some as a kid, and I would, it's like past a mile, I get asthma and I have to stop.
Sure.
I literally didn't make it to 2 miles until I was like 15 years old.
Okay.
Somewhere in there. And that was difficult. And I went super slow, basically shuffling.
Okay.
So I never really understood why. And I just sort of accepted that, like, I've got this skill walking, I've got this skill sprinting.
Sure.
And you try to go from walking to running, and it just wasn't working.
Right.
Until I discovered jogging, which is you think running's bad. Jogging's dumb. Especially as a young man. No, I don't want to be caught jogging.
Right. As a single young man trying to impress the ladies out there.
Like you're going jogging barely faster than walking.
Right.
And you jog past a girl, or you get jogged past by a girl. It's not
right.
It's not flattering.
Sure.
And you look dumb when you're doing it, and you're going slow. But
that's his opinion. We're not calling everyone who jogs and saying they look dumb, but go ahead.
I look dumb
Caleb
when I'm
felt
jogging.
like he looked dumb when he was jogging. So
compared to running,
right?
Like if you're running,
it's much
look
less
majestic.
Cool, right? Yes, and everyone's like, "Whoa, look at that person go!" Versus jogging, they're like, "Oh, that's cute."
Yeah, but it's a way to keep your heart rate under 150, and
Sure.
it's a way to keep going for long distances. So, I mean, I learned how to jog because my dad taught me how to jog. I did not like it, so I didn't do it. But I knew how. Signed up for a race with my dad and my little brother, who's a great runner, and doesn't jog. And the kid books it. And it was 17 miles, and I jogged the entire thing.
Nice.
And I'd never gone more than 10 miles, and that was in like 2-mile segments. So it really unlocked something for me. It was like, okay, I've been trying to go, from this step walking to this step running.
Sure.
And I missed a step. I didn't even realize that I have to go so much slower. And I kept, hitting this ceiling, trying to do more. And the second I realized I need to take a smaller step
Sure.
on my journey, I started making progress again. And then, that jogging turned into running, where at my peak I was running, 10 miles at a decent clip.
Nice. Your jogging got slowly faster and faster and faster and increased your capacity.
Because I mean, jogging is it's fast walking.
Sure.
I can walk faster than my dad jogs.
Nice.
But I can't go from fast walking to running.
Right.
So you have to take those little tiny incremental steps. It's that 1% improvement.
Absolutely. Because what happens when you don't is you push yourself too far, and then you get exercise-induced asthma, or you get some kind of backlash, some sort of resistance that stops, and then we stop trying altogether. Yeah. You said something else that I wanted to highlight a little bit too. You said your dad had taught you how to jog. You didn't do it, but he taught you how to jog. And that's a concept. We go out there and we try things and we think just because we're humans, we're going to know how to do things. And we don't. We don't get any training. We don't get any like teaching or an experience or mentorship. We're just trying stuff in a probably slightly dysfunctional state and then not applying it properly and like, oh, that didn't work. I can't jog. Well, maybe you didn't do it right. You know, maybe you need some help in that realm.
Yeah. And maybe it's not a technique. Maybe you're just damaged. I mean, I am a great example of that. So I learned how to jog and run. And I always just thought it's supposed to hurt.
Right.
Like my entire body, my entire core, my legs, my neck hurts, my chest, my shoulders, literally everything hurts when I run. But, you know, I can do it.
Sure.
Yay. I took the baby steps and now I'm running and now it hurts, but I guess it hurts for everyone. And I came in and saw you for the first time. You showed me that I was leaning to one side, I guess.
All the way to the right. It was great.
Yeah.
I mean, not all the way, you'd be laying down, but everything leaned to the right in your body.
Yeah.
Shoulders, hips, spine, everything went that way.
So I'm not aligned. Cool. Got adjusted. Felt like nothing because it's Nuka. And I was like, I feel nothing. This is weird. But, you know, Dr. J's nice. I guess I'll...
We'll trust him, I guess, right?
We'll see if that did anything. And then I went out the next morning for a run and I could run and it didn't hurt. I was like 2 miles in and I was like, why? Hold on a second. This is the first time in my life that I've run and it hasn't been painful.
Right.
I was just going. Then I did that race again, that 17-mile race, which isn't just 17 miles. It's
like up and over a mountain,
the Imogene Pass run. Mm-hmm. So you don't run up the whole way. Like some parts you're just going as fast as you can, which is a walk. But did that race. So it's 10 miles up, 7 miles down. At elevation, you peak at like 13,400 feet. It's brutal.
Sure.
But felt great. Came down, rested a couple weeks, went out for a run, ran out 2 miles. I noticed my knee was hurting. At 2 miles, it hurt so bad that I had to stop and walk home.
Oh no.
And I was like, this is dumb. I guess I injured myself or whatever. I'll let it heal for another couple weeks. Same thing. And it kept getting worse. It got to the point where like I couldn't, it hurt to walk.
Oh, sheesh.
Within a couple months. And I was like, oh, this is dumb. I was talking to PT. He's like, it come in, it's an issue that physical therapy can help with. I was like,
sure.
Okay, well, it's painful to exist right now. And I'm at the point where I need to start taking pills just to focus, ibuprofen or whatever. But
right.
I don't
but you're not a medicine taker in general.
I don't want to be dependent on ibuprofen to exist.
24 years old. Right.
Right.
Yes.
So I went in and he's like, okay, you have pain in your knee. And I was like, yeah, it hurts really bad. My knee hurts. And he's like, okay, it's because your hip. And I was like, no, it's my knee. My knee hurts. And he's like, no.
Over here, doc, here.
The issue's right here and right here.
Right.
I was like, no, it's okay, fine. What do I do about it? Thinking I'm going to, do some great exercises to strengthen. And he's like, clamshells. Like, you mean just move my knees? That's it?
Right.
That's the whole thing? And there were a bunch more exercises, but
sure.
That's what he started me with. And I was like,
basic
okay,
stuff. Yeah.
This is dumb. This is a dumb exercise. It's for old people. And it's not hard. 2 sets later, I was like, wow, I am weak, I guess. That shouldn't be hurting the way it hurts.
Right.
I guess it's my hip that makes my knee hurt. 6 sessions later, and a lot of diligent work.
Nice.
My knee pain was gone and I could run again. And then the next year I did the race and got a faster time without training.
That's awesome.
Like I literally ran 10 miles over 4 months to train and I still got a faster time because I had even more of these issues that I had to work through. Take baby steps, get rid of my pride, do the clamshells.
Right.
Get the little it's an adjustment. It's those little things to improve consistently.
Yep.
That's what did it.
You mentioned before the 1%. There's a whole book on that 1% concept of just little changes. We want these big, sexy changes, things. This cool new program or that's going to make the difference. It's really these little simple things. Getting the right practitioners, to adjust the body in the right ways, break out those habits. It all stems from old accidents or injuries. You had quite a few accidents and injuries growing up that leaves scar tissue, that leads imbalances, tears loose the connective tissue holding things together. And so it breaks down, and then it's pretty simple, especially early on in life, to correct those, get them stable. And when you synergize the spine, the muscle work, the little exercises, the body stabilizes and takes you literally farther than you could before.
Yeah. And it's on that idea of it takes time and it's little things. There's this idea in business that is continuing to hold true for me and most people I know. You will not get nearly as far as you think in a year, and you'll get way further in 3 years.
Ooh, I like that concept.
Because if you think of growth as linear,
right,
and then you look at actual growth as exponential, that first third, you go
just barely getting off the ground.
Second year, you're getting there. Third year, you're sky high.
Off. Yep. And it's the same with little health stuff. The progress at the beginning is slower. But as you consistently do those things, you see big changes,
Yeah.
It's not like you wake up one morning and you're like, oh, I'm going to drink more water. You drink water that day and you're like, I'm healed. I'm doing great. It's that consistent water that helps make a difference. There's a quote from Frasier, the show Frasier, which I don't think you've ever seen because you're too young. But
yep.
He says in there, they're doing this like weight loss challenge, and the guy like gained weight, Frasier's character. And he's like, I don't know what happened. I added a salad to every meal, It's those concepts of like, it's not what you're eating. It's how you're eating it, how your proportions are in that example, but it's all these little things that add up. And the 1% comes from a runner, right? It was, I want to say it.
I don't know the origin.
You don't know the story. I was just reading this the other day, and I'll look up the reference, maybe put it in the show notes or something, but it was this runner, and he wanted to shave like 5 seconds off his time, which is impressive at like high level. I believe he was a collegiate runner. He wanted to go like under 5 minutes, and he was just over that. And so he's like, there's not one thing I can do to shave 5 seconds off. I'm an elite level athlete. There's not a simple solution. So why don't I do 10 things that'll drop it a half a second each? And he did. He did this consistent, found 10 things to do. And some of them were simple, like go to bed at 10, no sugar on certain days, less of X, Y, and Z. And so all these little 10 things were able to shave that time off and get him where he wanted to go. A lot of times when people are experiencing challenges in life in general, in business, but particularly obviously with the focus of the podcast, with health, they have this health challenge and they're like, I want this one thing that's going to fix it. What's wrong with me? Tell me what to do. It's like, there's so many things going on in this scenario. There's so many different issues and challenges. We have to address a lot of things for you to get better. And you particularly, again, the whole goal of this podcast is to put people in the driver's seat of their own health.
Right.
As we take charge of it and do the consistent things, we get lost because, I took that supplement for 2 weeks and felt the same. Well, yes, you've been deficient in that nutrient for 15 years. You're going to feel the same. But if you take those consistently, if you're walking, if you're doing the clamshells, the boring exercises, the core things, visiting a chiropractor, massage therapist, whatever it happens to be for you, as you're doing all those things consistently, you're going to slowly and steadily rise to the point where you're running over mountains, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we like to think of life as these like independent buckets, right? Oh, I've got my sleep bucket, and I've got my work bucket, and I've got my home life bucket, and I checked on that bucket. It's good. I'm good.
Right.
Well, okay. These buckets are all connected. They got hoses in between them.
Yep.
And if you empty one bucket, it's going to start pulling from the others.
Absolutely.
So the level at which you're living life, one thing is not going to affect it that much. It'll help.
Right.
But you need it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. If your sleep bucket's full, but you're not eating properly and eating garbage all day long, that's going to drain your energy. That's going to cause other problems.
Yep.
Yep. A holistic approach. So as we're looking at it, can be very overwhelming for that too. When someone's trying to start, I have to fix everything all at once, And so what would you say to someone who feels kind of overwhelmed by that problem?
The way I've broken it down is 5 things: sleep, stress, exercise, nutrition, hydration. And yeah, that's a lot of things, but it's a lot less than okay, is how is my spine and how is my shoulders and how are my wrists and what about this vitamin and that mineral? It's like, okay, I mean, you can get blood work all day long.
Right.
You can get all the shots and pills and supplements and good things, and it gets overwhelming. So break it down to the basics. Start literally pick one. What's the worst? What's the thing you're worst at of those 5? Do that consistently for a month to 3 months, and then make sure you are tracking it. Like hold yourself accountable. Find friends to hold you accountable, and then great, pick the next thing. As soon as you feel relatively confident, keep tracking that. But it's going to be a lot easier. It's not going to take a lot of your mental space because the overwhelming means there's not a lot of mental space to address these things.
Right.
So pick one that you can focus on, the worst one that you can handle. Maybe, your stress levels at work are so bad that it's like, I can't even address that. Okay, cool. Let's focus on going to bed at a consistent time and getting 8 hours of sleep and then drinking water. Those are, it's mentally easy to manage drinking more water.
Hydration is the easiest thing to make happen. Yep.
Great. So start with the biggest win you can get, which is drinking water, and then setting a sleep schedule, and then cutting out processed foods and eating more whole foods, eating enough calories, not too many, not too few.
Sure.
And just one by one, get something in place. Constantly go back and check, but you don't have to focus on it anymore. And just keep moving your focus to whatever the next thing you can do is.
You said something there too I want to highlight that helps people a lot is tracking it. You said for accountability, but it's also for your own fortitude, if you will. As you look back and you see this list and you've checked off every day I've done this, you gain confidence in your ability to do things. When we're stuck, we're way down there, we don't feel like we have any control over it. So this type of validation shows we do. We're making progress.
Yeah.
So as you add in number 2 and number 3 on that list, you have confidence that you didn't have before because you accomplished one and you're able to push yourself forward at a better pace. And it snowballs,
Yeah.
It builds that momentum more. So you're able to do it. And then again, if you fall, you slack off, you can get yourself back on because now you have the skills that you did it before. We had this discussion once, we're both business owners, about when do we stop being scared that it'll all fall apart, And if you're a business owner listening to this, you probably understand that, but
you don't.
That was my answer, was like, I don't think you do. But then my second answer was, it's different. Even if it does, I have done it before, I can do it again. Yeah. And there's a lot of confidence that comes in that. A lot of people, most people haven't just had health issues since they were born. At some point they were making progress and doing good. And looking back at those times and being like, I've done it before, I can do it again. Slow, steady process. It's frustrating if you were an elite level athlete and suddenly you can't hardly move. Doing clamshells or going for a walk is almost torturous, but it doesn't have to be, right?
Yeah.
Just do it consistently, build up. So many people live limited lives because they don't see it possible to not do that. Oh, I have a bad back, I have a bad knee, I have bad this, I have bad that. I have stress levels up. They came up with all these reasons and they're valid. Like, life is stressful. There are a lot of overwhelming problems, but just because they're valid doesn't mean we have to accept them. Right? We can choose a different path.
Yeah. And you also mentioned like writing down or tracking goals for the sake of encouragement. That's huge.
Oh, massive.
In business, the first year, I didn't really know my goals. And then a mutual friend of ours told me, Caleb, about a year into business, write down where you want to be in 3 years.
Nice.
And then 12 months later, she told me to look back at it and we'd passed all of those goals. Nice. But I never saw the progress. Right? Because I'm so focused on the growth and the day to day. And I can remember what happened a week ago and look at today and be like, maybe we grew, maybe we shrank, maybe we did. Like, I don't really know. But if you look back at, then you have record where you were. Your memory is bad. People can't remember things.
Yep.
Write it down. Write down how you're feeling. Write down where you're at. Write down where you want to be, and then go back and look at it monthly, quarterly, yearly, because you'll see the growth.
Absolutely. And goals versus gains. We have another friend that talked about this concept. There's a book on that, Goals Over Gains or something like that. where we have to look at what we've accomplished because we often get so distracted by our goals and I want to be over there and I'm over here, but look where I was. Yeah. And look where I've grown to. It's really pretty cool. And I love that concept of writing it down and making it happen. I remember a few years ago, someone challenged me, similar idea, write your goals down. So I wrote my goals. And then I said, here's what I want to do to celebrate me getting these goals. And I promptly forgot about that notebook and I did not look at it again. I set in, once I do these, I'm going to do this. And about a year or so later, maybe I was going through old notebooks and I opened that up and I pulled it up and I was like, oh, this is cool. And I looked and I'm like, I hit all these goals. And the reward I'd laid for myself, I had just done the week before. It was such a cool experience. I was like, oh, this actually happened because I set the goal and intention, but I didn't just set the goal and wish. I set the goal and I kept working hard. And it's the same with these health challenges. We set a goal and we consistently work hard at it. One of my patients described it perfectly recently. He said, he's been patient about 5 months, came in with some health issues, wanted to get better. And he said, day to day, I didn't see any change. But week to week, I could see a little bit. And as he continued that for 5 months, he's doing significantly better. He said in his mind, with the type of issue he's having, he gave himself 12 months to heal, which is genius. And most people don't do that. Most people are like, I have this problem, let's fix it now. Like, okay, yes, but it took so long to get here. It's going to take a while. So this guy gave his body 12 months to heal. And at 5 months, he's like, I'm where I was expecting to be at 12 months. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
Because he was consistent, did these little daily things, is taking care of himself, including, chiropractic and other things. He's not just coming to me hoping I'll fix it. He's doing stuff on his own too. And that's real key to success there.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for balancing setting specific goals and setting a direction or a vector. We've talked about this.
Absolutely. I love this concept.
So think about, you're right here on the graph and you want to get to right here on the graph.
Right.
Great. You can set that goal and then you work towards that goal and it probably gets a little harder as you get closer, but you might be able to push to and make it to that goal. Congratulations. Sure. You made it to a point on the map.
Check.
Versus a vector is a direction and a magnitude.
Right.
I'm going there and I'm going there as fast as I can, which maybe is slow, but it's as fast as I can.
Sure.
And so now there's no telling where you're going to end up. And you will be successful if you make it 7 feet in that direction.
Right.
Because it was that direction, it was the fastest you could go. Or if you make it 7 million miles and you could have set a goal for, 8 miles, you made it 50 because you didn't limit yourself with the goal. Set those milestones along the way. Like, hey, it will be great when I reach 10 miles. But I'm going that direction for as long and as fast as I can.
Absolutely, because that's why we're here. We have this concept that if we set a goal and we get there, then we're going to be so happy about it. And we're going to be so good. And that's what life's about. We're going to be happy at this point. There's a book called Happiness Advantage where he kind of dispels this myth, but we all do it. It's like, once I make X, Y, and Z in business or in my career, then I'll be happy because I'll be able to afford all the things I want.
Right.
And then we're not. It's like our goals need to go beyond that. Not beyond that in terms of magnitude of what we accomplish, but I want to go in this direction and find joy in that journey going that direction.
Yeah.
Finding joy in doing clamshell exercises, finding joy in jogging because we know it's getting us where we want to go. It's helping us improve. Taking those steps and enjoying the process of going that direction versus being so focused on it. Once I'm there, then it'll be okay. Right.
Yeah, but at the same time, don't get rid of the I want to get there.
Absolutely.
Because the specific endpoints or specific waypoints, as it were, those are incredibly valuable.
Sure.
Those give you something to say, hey, I can measure the level of success that I'm achieving, but they aren't the success themselves.
Right. The success is what you build inside of you in the process and what you create. But yes, those waypoints help us know we're on that vector, then give us, again, waypoints. I like that word. That's great. So
I didn't make it up.
But not really? Nice. Good. Excellent. Well, this has been a fun discussion with Caleb Marsh today. If you want to see more of Caleb's, what he's doing in business, he runs a company that is creative marketing solutions for a variety of businesses, including my own. He helps run the logistics of this podcast. And by helps run it, I mean, he's got a team that he sends it over to. But doing great things, great mindset. We appreciate you having on here. Any closing thoughts, anything you want to share in the podcast out today?
I don't think so. I think we've covered it.
We've covered a lot.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks again for being here.